Today, we're diving into a source that makes a pretty wild claim. It says that two recent U.S. military actions, which seemed totally separate, were actually part of the same secret war, a war for energy dominance. Let's dig in. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the holiday week of December 2025. You've got U.S. bombs dropping on what are called ISIS camps in Nigeria. At the very same time, halfway across the world, the U.S. Navy is seizing massive oil tankers. The official story, totally unrelated. One's about fighting terror, the other is about enforcing sanctions. But what if they weren't? What if this was all connected? That's the big question this source is asking, and that's the mystery we're going to unpack today. All right, so to even start to answer that, we need to know exactly what went down. So let's take a closer look at these two military actions that are at the very heart of this analysis. First up, Venezuela. The source talks about something called Operation Southern Spear. On December 10th, the U.S. grabs a supertanker holding 1 million barrels of oil. Then, boom, 10 days later, they grab another one. And get this, the second tanker wasn't even sanctioned. So what's going on? Well, the source claims the real goal was a total and complete blockade to stop all oil exports that weren't from Chevron, which would basically bring the country's main industry to its knees. Then, on Christmas Day of all days, the scene shifts to Africa. The administration announces what it calls powerful and deadly airstrikes in northwest Nigeria. The official target was ISIS. The official reason? To stop the slaughter of Christians. And it's worth pointing out, this was all done with Nigeria's blessing.
Okay, so let's just recap. We've got two big military moves in two major oil countries. Now, how was this all sold to the public at the time?
Well, the story you heard for Venezuela was all about pressure on Maduro and stopping narco-terrorism. But for Nigeria, totally different angle. That was all about defending Christians and fighting radical Islamic terrorism. See? Two completely separate stories for two separate problems. All right, that's the official version. But this is where our source says, hold on a second. They suggest we need to look at this whole thing through a different lens, a market war lens. And when you put on those glasses, whoa, things look very different. So let's talk about the market impact here, because the numbers are huge. Venezuela, they're sitting on the largest proven oil reserves in the world. They're pumping out almost 1 million barrels a day. You just can't take that much oil off the market without making some serious waves. And that's just Venezuela. Now let's throw Nigeria into the mix. We're talking Africa's biggest producer, cranking out 1.8 million barrels every single day. So any hint of trouble there, even just the idea of disruption, is enough to freak out the entire global market. So here's the bottom line. According to this source, forget the official reasons for a second. The actual result of all this was a huge sudden disruption risk for two major oil players who, aren't exactly in the U.S.'s inner circle. And this is where the story takes a really interesting twist. The source connects all this international drama to a fundraising dinner that happened months before any of this. We're talking about a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. And the source claims Trump laid out a deal for a room full of oil executives. It was pretty simple, really. You give me $1 billion for my campaign, and I'll make sure to protect your profits. So check out this timeline the source put together. In April, you have the big ask for $1 billion. Fast forward 8 months to December, and suddenly you've got military moves that just happen to squeeze two of their biggest competitors. That timing? Well, that's the whole ballgame for this argument. So you take the military actions, you add the impact on the oil market, and you throw in that alleged deal, and suddenly you get to the source's bombshell thesis. They're basically saying, hey, this wasn't foreign policy, not even close. So it really boils down to two completely different stories. You've got the official story, a noble fight against terrorists and religious persecution. And then you've got the source's take, using the military as a tool to mess with oil prices and pay back your political donors. The author even gives everyone a role in what they call this fever dream scenario. Trump is the petrodollar pyromaniac, the guy lighting the fire. Big oil, they're the grateful arsonist, happily fanning the flames. And who's just chilling in the background, enjoying the warmth? Saudi and OPEC+, the quiet beneficiaries. Yeah, the source is not pulling any punches here. They call it, and I'm quoting, state-sponsored market manipulation with missiles and boarding parties. It's basically reframing the military not as a tool for defense, but as a tool for price control. And it all comes down to this one final quote from the source, which just cuts through everything. They call it, quote, The war to keep oil expensive enough that the right people stay rich. I mean, it strips away all the geopolitics and just leaves you with that one raw motive. So there you have it. That's the argument from the source material we've been looking at. It draws a straight line from a fancy dinner in Florida all the way to military action in Venezuela and Nigeria. And it really leaves you with a pretty stark question to think about. When you see stuff like this happen, are you watching foreign policy in action, or are you just watching an armed business deal go down?